What's up, everybody? We hope you guys enjoyed that. I don't know. We were just trying something different for a different way to start the stream. Um, Maybe that would be better if it was like 2 minutes and we started it like exactly, like
Mm,
2 minutes ago. I don't know
yeah.
to get people in here, but there's an alien crash and the Spurs have an alien on the roster. And also tonight, it kind of was like if it's a good day for Victor, you know what I mean? It still was a good day for Victor, but if the Spurs are an alien ship, we definitely crashed
Mm.
tonight in the fourth quarter against the Wizards, Ethan.
Yes. I think Sean put it best throughout the game when he said we're really letting them get back into this. We're not playing with enough sharpness, I think is the actual word that he used. And he even said, this is not the team you want hanging around when the fourth quarter is about to end because they have guys that can kill you, like Tyus Jones, like Kyle Kuzma, and of course, love him or hate him, Jordan Poole. All three of them have been clutch in these situations in prior games, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I hate to put it this way, Ethan, because I don't want to be too derogatory to the
Mm.
guys, but I think in this scenario, with the way that this game went, I gotta agree with our guy Bobby February here. The boys choked so hard
Yep.
tonight, especially when you look at that Keldon turnover at the end of the game. But I don't want to jump into it too much because we usually go through our game flow and whatnot, Ethan, before we start. But any kind of overall thoughts on this game before we get into the nitty gritty of each quarter?
It wasn't pretty, really, at all. Like, we were up by 10 pretty much the whole time, but, like, I don't know. Everything felt so effortful. We really never found a flow and constant mistakes that were, you know, expounded by some poor refereeing at times. All these things, together in a pod, it didn't bow well for the Spurs.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the one thing I probably felt like I could talk about before we get into the game flow is the officiating. It's not just because Don Barlow fouled out. There are a couple different examples that I could point to in this game to
Hmm.
where it wasn't that great. I think, I mean, maybe I'm forgetting some other games this year, Ethan, but to me, that this one kind of felt like the worst officiated game. Um,
Hmm.
that I've seen all year. Wizard 8000 says that refs were calling some BS fouls in favor of the Wizards. And I think, if you look at the last three fouls on Barlow, you can see those. There were some other ticky tack ones, even the first couple fouls on Barlow where you could argue were ticky tack, but I could at least see those. Like there was one where he slapped either Marvin Bagley or Daniel Gafford's arm, which led
Hmm.
to an and one. I'm pretty Marvin
Gafford.
Bagley.
Oh, who knows? One
It
of them.
doesn't matter. One of them, right?
Mhm.
But regardless, man, I don't think that was the reason that the Spurs lost tonight. I think Sean put it well, like you said on the Spurs broadcast. He said, we shouldn't even be in this situation at the end of the game because on that last box out attempt on the miss that we had. Or excuse me, on the miss that the Wizards had, where Wemby went up and battled with Kuzma. Kuzma literally put his elbow in Wemby's chin, and
Mhm.
they didn't call anything. Now, with that being said, if you don't have the turnovers that you have throughout the game, and also, as much as some of them were ticky tack, I think there were some fouls that we had tonight that I think were just a little bit ill advised, I guess you could say, on our part.
Mhm.
That was really what stuck out to me kind of throughout the game, Ethan. Despite the poor officiating, at least from my perspective, the turnovers, and then also some fouls that we had that, like I said, were ill advised. I think
Mhm.
those are kind of what killed us. There's some other things too, but the theme is kind of self inflicted mistakes, and as Vainstain says, we throw the game, and that's basically what we were saying there. And another thing that I'll finish off with this, Ethan, before I
Mhm.
dish it back to you, is remember last post game against the Wizards, I had like something in my notes that said I felt like we could run these guys if we were
Mhm.
just playing, together and connected. That's how I felt throughout the night tonight. I think if you watch the Spurs broadcast, you could hear that from Sean Elliott on commentary. Um, and that's just exactly how I felt about it, man. I felt like this was a game that we should have won. We had multiple opportunities to, go on another run when we were at 10, at multiple points of the game. If we were able to go on at 8, or even like a 7-point run. That could have been the difference to extend the lead to 20 or
Mhm.
close to it. But we just were never able to pull away. But with all that being said, I think Vainstain brings up a good comment here. This was a good learning experience. Um, and it's very tough to say that on a night like this, but at the same time, there were definitely, I think when the guys go back and look at the film, they're going to be like, okay, this is just, there's so many things that we did to shoot ourselves in the foot. Um, and this is a team that we should have swept and,
Mhm.
should have been on a 3-game winning streak tonight. And a lot of that does come back to decision making, which Bobby February is mentioning in the comments right now.
Yeah, and you got to give props and some credit to the Wizards. I felt like their interior defense was much improved from previous games. Part of that's probably due to the coaching change. I know they got rid of Wes Unseld specifically because of the team's defensive lapses. The energy for them felt increased, and part of that's probably also due to the fact that they're playing Victor Wembanyama, so they don't necessarily want him to go crazy on the inside, which then affects other guys like Jeremy Sohan, who couldn't get a basket off the interior and led to some over driving, it felt like, where we couldn't make the right pass. What we can get into the details here in a second, but last point on the turnovers. I know we had 14. They actually had more with 18, but
Mm-hmm.
when 5 of those come from Devin, who otherwise played a really good game actually, and 4 of those come from Victor. And those are our two primary offensive facilitators and the guys that we score through. That's the problem. Like they can't have that much, like that volume of mistakes just in their lap.
Yeah, and the other thing that I'm also noticing, Ethan, I just went and looked back at the old box score, just to see if Daniel Gafford played because I knew Marvin Bagley started last game, but I couldn't remember
Hmm.
who came off the bench. He did not, so I think that also was probably a reason why the Wizards were able to have a little bit better. Obviously, it improved throughout the game, but I think Daniel Gafford playing instead of Patrick Baldwin Jr.
Yep.
Helped their interior defense for sure. But with that being said, let's jump into the game flow here, Ethan. If I can pull it up, as ESPN is just giving me issues again, just like the last stream we did, Ethan. It doesn't want me to have success. They don't like that we kind of we play off their name.
Mm-hmm.
But we finally got it pulled up here. Here we go. Here's the box score from tonight. Can I get this? And no, I can't, Ethan. I'm sorry.
It's all good.
They just don't want to see me win, Ethan. We can start off with the first quarter, which was by far the best quarter of the night. We ended up winning that one by 10, 35-25. I'll jump into my notes here, Ethan, and then dish
Hmm.
it right back to you. So I really had the least amount of notes in this quarter because it was the best one.
Hmm.
Um, Wemby was scoring early as usual. Devin was finding him on some lobs, or even if they weren't lobs, they were just over the top passes in the pick and roll, which is something that's been nice to see. That ties into something you've been talking about for a while, in the sense that we're looking for him now. That's not a complaint that we're having on every live stream like we were earlier in the year. So that was good. I wrote down even start. It wasn't our best start, but it wasn't terrible, which is why we were able to have a 10-point lead. But I feel like if we did have some other, and obviously this is being very nitpicky, kind of going for perfection. But at the same time, I feel like if we would have executed to our standard, if you will, I think we could have won this quarter by 15-20. Um, at least with the starting unit, because I felt like the bench did a really solid job in the first quarter. We saw Blake's defense right away. He got, I think, 2 steals in this quarter. Maybe wrong there. He had 3 steals in total, so he may have had 2. I know for a fact that he got a steal on an inbound where Keldon ended up picking it up and dished it to him for a wide open 3,
Hmm.
which was really nice to see. Just that defensive impact from the jump. We got to see him and Barlow in the pick and roll. Dom got a steal also. And the main thing that I was noticing in the good moments of this game, which was really kind of the end of this first quarter, we saw it a little bit in the beginning of the quarter, but when Blake and Dom Barlow were out there, and Keldon got a couple shots too. I wrote down Keldon scoring in the first quarter. I don't know how much it was. He only had 14 tonight in total. But he probably had like 2 or 3 shots in the first quarter since I wrote that down. But Blake Wesley and Dominic Barlow playing together on the floor, you really saw the team defense and the rotations from those guys, as well as the pick and roll chemistry. Now, it's not going to be perfect because they're both still 20-year-olds, in their second year in the league. But that was what stood out to me in
Mhm.
the first quarter, Ethan, because when that second unit can play team defense and kind of keep the momentum from the first unit with Wemby coming in scoring a lot of buckets, that is really when our team plays its best.
Agreed. I had a lot of the same notes. By far our best quarter, 25 to 35, like you said. Devin and Wemby's two-man game is starting to grow and blossom. I think a couple times, everybody, not just Devin, but we missed the pop man on some pick and pop situations where Wemby was wide open at the top, or maybe it was just a little bit late, and we gave time to Gafford to rotate back out and contest that three. You'd like that pass to be a little quicker. That kind of led to some over penetration. This is really the only negative I had. Over penetration in the sense that we'd get right under the basket, have to pick up our dribble, and struggle to find out who to kick it to. The offense at times did not flow when we started to over penetrate, which led to some silly turnovers, which really is the only reason the Wizards were able to keep it within 10. Had it not been for those silly turnovers, we really would have run away with this quarter. Keldon came in, kind of helped that penetration because he was extremely physical. I think that's probably why you wrote him down. Physical, getting to the cup, everybody attacking the rim. And then Blake Wesley, like you said, from a mentality perspective, leading the charge for that bench unit and kind of that scrappy defensive identity. I continue to be impressed with Blake Wesley. Only 12 minutes tonight, 7 points, 3 steals, 2 assists, hit the 1 3 that he took. Um, but the main thing, again, one turnover and really limiting his mistakes.
Yeah, the defensive intensity you can see from the jump.
Hmm.
You kind of I mean, it wasn't that I never noticed it, but I would say that you kind of picked up on it before I did. That's kind of how I would describe it. Where,
Mm.
I mean, obviously it's easier to see with a steal, but he comes in and he's immediately got ball pressure.
Yeah.
And that's honestly a difference from Trey Jones, and that's not to put a negative on Trey Jones. That's not why I'm bringing this up. I'm just saying when you go from having Trey Jones guarding you and say you're, someone who stays in for a little bit longer, if you're the primary ball handler, let's say it's Jordan Poole tonight, right? Which I believe is who he got the steal off of
Yep. Yep. He was
to
giving him
begin.
fits.
Right. It's gonna be a difference when you bring in Blake, who's gonna ball pressure you and have 6'4", a 6'4", I say a 6'4" wingspan. Obviously, that's not his actual wingspan length, but the wingspan of someone who is 6'4". He's lengthier than Trey, and he's also he applies more ball pressure. So that's just I think you kind of get what I'm saying. When you have Trey at the beginning of the game, and then you have Blake coming in and doing that, that can cause some fits because guys weren't used to it for the first
Hmm.
6 or 7 minutes or so.
It's the perfect changeup. And I don't think what you said is a knock on Trey. He's probably a higher IQ defensive player, really solid help defender. But Blake just has that nasty to him and he can get into guys better.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I didn't really have anything else written down in the first quarter, Ethan, because like we
Mhm.
said, it was a 10-point win. I was hoping that going into the second, they could build on some of those things, clean some things up, sharpen up, like we mentioned with Sean earlier. But unfortunately, that did not happen in the second quarter. We had more turnovers, and we ended up losing that one 29-23, which was the beginning of letting Washington get back into the game. But since I started the first quarter, I'm going to dish it to you to start the second quarter, Ethan.
Yeah, I didn't have too many notes on this one. We only had 23 points in the quarter, so it kind of felt, again, that theme of every basket we make just being really difficult. Like, be forced to play in the half court situation, not getting easy baskets, and then committing silly mistakes in the process. Um, Trey had one of the greatest tip passes I've ever seen. After a steal, he literally tipped it basically the full length of the court. Who again? I forget.
Devin.
To Devin, who got the dunk. Um, and then another insane pass from Victor Wembanyama, falling out of bounds, going full speed, had all the momentum with him, and he was able to kind of tip it back behind him to Trey, who got an easy layup. Two incredible moments in that second quarter that was otherwise pretty bland. I wrote down we have to make some stops and get easy baskets. Everything is super tough right now. A sickening number of foul calls, both sides. Just
Yeah.
ticky tack stuff. It wasn't enjoyable to watch. We had a 2-for-1 opportunity. Were without momentum. The Wizards were really in charge. Dougie hit a three. A buddy of mine texted me, Tanner, who's in the comments oftentimes, and he said Doug McDermott's probably a top three GM move from Brian Wright, like signing him. And I was like,
Mhm.
he's making a pretty good argument for that because right now he really only comes in and just snipes and keeps us within the game and tries to like break up the momentum for the Wizards and whoever else we're playing from time to time. And I don't know if it was in this quarter or later in the game, but I know he had a fantastic game. But Chetty Osman, 20 points tonight, another big reason we were able to kind of maintain that lead and really stay within it until that last couple minutes where the Wizards just went crazy. So shout out to Chetty Osman being that consistent veteran for us.
Yeah, and that was huge in kind of the absence of Jeremy tonight.
Mm-hmm.
When you consider the game that he had, you needed somebody else to step up. I had him written down in the second quarter. I could be wrong here, Ethan, but I actually had that tip pass from Trey to Devin in the third quarter. Um,
Oh my
but
God. You know what? I read my third quarter notes.
did you just read them?
Yep, I did.
That's okay,
It's a
Ethan. That's
sneak
okay.
peek. That's a sneak peek for what's to come in the third quarter.
I'm glad I wasn't off on that because I was
Oh
like
man.
either I've got it wrong or you do. You know what I mean?
Well, I
So
literally have 4 notes in the second. If you would just read them real quick,
yo,
I'm
go
I'm just
for it.
gonna read them. I'm not even gonna expand on them. Strong start, sloppy from 9 to 8 minute mark, giving up transition layups. Wizards strong interior defense, and Devin and Chetty with threes late to retake a 6 point lead.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
it.
I'll read some of mine. Laura Latin, I see you in the comments. You said we're still on the stat screen. We usually like to keep this up when we're going through the game flow just so people can see the box score and also more importantly so they can see the quarter score because that's kind of what we go by during this. So that's why that's still up. But I took a good bit of notes here in the second quarter, Ethan, so I'll give you what I had written down.
Please.
Marvin Bagley and ones on
Mhm.
Barlow. Plus turnovers led to the Wizards cutting back in. That was at the beginning of the quarter. I don't know the timestamp on this one, Ethan, but there was a 12-0 run from when we went up 42-28. So I guess we
Mhm.
did have a little bit of a
Substantial
good
lead, yeah.
a good start in the second quarter. The Wizards went on a 12-0 run to cut it back to 42-40.
Yeah.
And that was huge. I wrote down Doug getting beat on defense. I know that happens from time to time. He gave up an and one and then also missed a rotation. But at the same time, at the end of the quarter, or maybe that was the third quarter. Yeah, the third quarter. You got me confused now because Doug hit a big three at the end of the third quarter.
He did.
Besides the point, I was wondering if that was the second quarter. But the defense has got worse as the game has gone on. Our
Mhm.
intensity dipped after we built a lead. 42-28, 12-0 run. There were a couple great backdoor passes from Dom to Devin this game, and one of them was in the second quarter. And Devin had a tough finish at the rim. Our rotations have fell off since the first. That ties into the other comment I had. Guys have to sharpen it up. That's when Sean said it before halftime. I think that encapsulates the whole game. And then the other thing I had written down was Shetty ballin'. But Ethan, I see we got a super chat here, so I want to bring this up. Shout out to Film Room. He says pair character jumping up and down saying number one fan. Oh, that's an emoji.
Oh, yeah. I was like, what?
I was confused too. But shout out to Film Room. I'm sorry we couldn't see your emoji. This is probably my favorite comment ever on
Mm.
SSPN. Free Barlow. Um, so yeah, Vainstain agrees. He says Barlow got robbed for a good game. I get the first three, Ethan, as much as I feel like it was kind of ticky tack, and I think that was both ways. So that's why it's like I can deal with the first three a little bit, but the next three were just
Awful.
it was and for a guy like him, like trying to make a statement and earn minutes, and also it was in the fourth quarter when Wemby went out, so it was a crucial time in the game, and then you saw them get inside buckets.
Mhm.
I know I'm jumping ahead in the game flow here, but just since we had the super chat and he had his comment earlier, I had to mention that. I mean, when you talk about the interior defense, I think it was better in general overall throughout the game, but they had like 4 or 6 straight points after Barlow fouled out on the interior. And I know that Sohan has played center, in spurts, kind of like he did in that lineup. Um, but still, when you have Daniel Gafford back, that's not going to do the job. Like, even at that point, Barlow's bigger than Sohan.
Yeah, for sure. Uh, you want to stay like even keeled when discussing officiating, but
Right.
it was it was blatantly not great, and even more so than the ticky tack borderline shouldn't have been called fouls on Mr. Don Barlow. There were just blatant misses, like non calls against.
On the spur or on the for the Wizards too. Like, when I say that, I mean like it goes both ways. Like, there was one ticky tack call earlier in the first half. I can't remember when it was, but it was right after Barlow got called with one.
Mhm.
Um, and then Wemby, like, yes, he has his hands up, but he jumps into a defender,
Yeah.
like, on a contest, and they don't call it. And I get that Wemby gets away with a lot, but that's just the example of how, like, it wasn't good for the Wizards, it wasn't good for us. And like you said, I think the most important thing is it mucked up the game, and
Mhm.
it made it not enjoyable to watch. I feel like probably both coaches came away from this one like, man, the
Mm.
officiating was annoying.
Agreed, agreed. And there was one other point about the second quarter that I wanted to make real quick that kind of ties into what you said about Dom being able to make a couple great backdoor passes to Devin. When Keldon came in with the bench unit in that second quarter, part of the reason we got off to a great start is we were kind of posting him up at the elbow and letting him take advantage of a smaller defender, either getting on the inside or kicking it out, swing, swing, wide open three, right? The Wizards adjusted to that. And I don't know if you noticed this, but they were pressing everyone that posted up, like
Yeah.
Dom to Wemby, whoever had the ball, like in that mid range area and was looking to make a pass. They really couldn't because they were trapped with their back to the basket, unable to make backdoor passes. So shout out to the Wizards. They like understood that is a huge part of our offense, and if they take it away from us, suddenly it becomes very difficult to get a basket.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree there. I believe over the past like 2 or 3 games, Wemby has had at least, I could be wrong on this, but at least 6 assists. I want to
Hmm.
say he's had, maybe it's 5, um, and I know 4 is still like a solid number for him. But to your point, them shutting down, our elbow offense, if you will, that we kind of really coming into the season we associated with Zach,
Hmm.
um, they were putting ball pressure on us in those situations, which disrupted our sets. So, like you said, they knew the scouting report, and they were able to do that. And that was a situation where they were able to cause turnovers too,
Hmm.
like with the Wemby turnovers you mentioned. Barlow did have one. Um, and there were probably some, I can't remember. It feels like it's mainly kind of our bigs that
Devin
we
had
give it to
5,
at the elbow, right?
but
And
that
and you
wasn't from the elbow. You're right.
Yeah, I think maybe Keldon might have had one of his 2 turnovers from the elbow. I can't remember exactly, but still, that's, we run a lot of offense when we're not running it through our ball handlers. That's why I mentioned the 2 Dom backdoor passes to Devin earlier, because it looked very reminiscent of Zach, and you can tell that that's what we want. We want our bigs to be able to do that,
Mm.
um, when it comes to our offense. But you want to get into the third quarter?
Let's do it.
Do you want me
You,
to
you
read mine?
you already know what I thought of the third quarter, so you go ahead.
All right. Transition defense, not great to start. Wizards have more intensity. That's another theme that we've seen in a couple games this season. Not even a couple games, really throughout the season. Not every single one, but there's been a lot of times where we've came out lackadaisical in the
Mm.
second half. And with the way that the second quarter went, I was very surprised with that. I was like, okay, yes, that wasn't a great second quarter, but now we've got the halftime adjustments. They saw what they can do in the first. Like, I was really expecting the intensity to come back. And, it wasn't terrible, because we did end up winning this quarter by 2, but it wasn't enough to extend our lead and win the quarter, by around 10, as we felt like maybe we should have the whole game. Um, There was that tip pass that you mentioned that led to the Devin and one, which was a great play. I thought that may be momentum shifting. Um, and it was a good start with that play, but about halfway through the quarter, that's when the momentum started to go back from the
Mm,
Wizards. Once again, we just were not able to pull away tonight at any point. And that's the next thing I had written down. We can't pull away. Although at the end of the quarter, and this was on the second Barlow backdoor to Devin Vassell with 2:39 left, we did get up to 10 again. But this is another issue that we've had at times this year, Ethan. We weren't able to finish the quarter. Doug did have that big three, but at the end of the game, at the end of the quarter, they were just able to get some. I don't even know how to
I think it was a
describe it.
Kyle Kuzma just turnaround jumper, right?
Yeah, but it was stuff that like we kind of, even if like it maybe was a tough shot from him, it was like we had some mixed execution, like
Mm, yeah,
pre-play, if that makes sense. Like it
you're
was
right.
we fumbled the bag. That's what I'm trying to say. At the end of the quarter, we could have had a 10-point lead and we let it get to like 6 or 4 or something
Mm.
because of our own mistakes. That was the bottom line.
Yeah, I think at the beginning of the year, we had to learn how to come from behind and win games we weren't supposed to, right? And then, kind of the past couple weeks, maybe month and a half, we've had to learn how to just be competitive and maintain a competitive edge throughout the entire game and maybe come out on top every once in a while. And now we're having to learn, Jude, how to win games that we technically should win. Like, we were in control the whole time, like you said, and we just gave the Wizards every opportunity to come back, and they did because they have some veteran players that understand how to win games.
Yeah, and to add on to what you were just saying, we also have to learn how to deal with winning because we just
Hmm.
had the two back-to-back wins on a back-to-back, which was huge. That's a
Yep,
great building block for a team like this. Um, but we just did not have the intensity that we had in both of those two games tonight.
you're
At
right.
at I mean, you saw it in spurts when we were able to get up to 10 at multiple different times during the game, but you didn't see it consistently throughout. And that kind of ties into a comment that I saw earlier before we get to the fourth quarter here, Ethan. I want to bring it up. I thought it was a good point. Um, General Eli says the team seems to play down to competition sometimes. Hopefully, that's something they grow out of. I'm sure it is. I mean, the other thing that we've got to remember, as I've said at nauseum at times, Ethan, and I know they're NBA guys, and some of them it's like Keldon and Devin, they've been around for a while. We don't want to make those excuses as much. Um, and we've gone over this so many times, so I'm not going to do all the pre-qualifiers that I
Hmm.
normally do. But we're the youngest team in the league, and we're learning how to win. I mean, point blank, period. And we're just not going to be as, I hate to say this, because look, there are times in my life where, I mean, I'm still 23. Like I'm not, there are times in my life where I'm not in the, you know, I'm saying we're not as emotionally as mature
Mm.
as we could be. And there are times in my life where that still happens to me. I'm sure the same thing for you, Ethan.
Hmm.
It's
Absolutely.
just these guys are held to a much higher standard because of the amount of money they make, and then also just because they're on a professional sports team.
Yep.
But when you take a 30,000-foot view, it's actually not that surprising that a team of 20 to 21-year-olds, after getting their first back-to-back win, came out a little lackadaisical, if that makes sense. And it's something we've also seen throughout the year at times, to Eli's comment.
Hmm.
Um, but it was just a really tough time for it to happen again. Kind of felt like a kick in the lower area. I'll leave it
Yeah.
at that. Just because of the intensity we saw in the past two games, with not only kind of handling business against Portland like we should have in this game tonight, but then you go and fight and scrap for a win against a team that's playing the Thunder tonight for the best record in the Western Conference. I think that's why this one is
Mm.
so much more, feels the way that it does.
Yeah, for sure. Within a young team, there's going to be lots of highs and lots of lows. And what we're looking for right now is just a level of consistency, no matter who we're playing. And we haven't gotten to that point yet. And something else that kind of connects to this is Jeremy's game tonight was subpar. 1 for 7 from the field, missed both of his threes, 5 rebounds, 1 assist, only 2 points. Not the best showing from him, but he came out looking to score in the same way that he was scoring against Minnesota. Like, he was doing a lot of pivot fakes, a lot of Paul fakes.
How many did he have against Minnesota? I
I
know
don't
he had
remember.
31 against the Blazers.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking
I
of.
think
Which game did he go crazy in?
that was the Blazers game.
The
Yeah.
Blazers game.
Not to correct you, I just
No,
wanted
you're fine, you're fine.
to
It was one of those games where he was going crazy and scoring in a lot of different ways. He tried to do that again tonight and tried to continue that momentum, and none of the shots were falling. The Wizards, props to them, they were playing much better defense on Sohan. Um, and I think he kinda got lost into himself after that, like, frustrated and didn't try and score pretty much in the second half. So, those are some more, like you said, immaturity things that we're gonna have to get over, and move past before we're actually a winning team.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a really tough one. Um, it was tough for him because so I just went and looked at the other stats. He did have 13 in the Minnesota game, and even though he wasn't scoring like that much in that game, he ended up having 7 in the fourth quarter. So it was
Maybe
like
that's what
you
I'm
were able
thinking
to
of.
you were no, and he had some pump fakes. He
Mhm,
scored he had a little scoring run in the fourth in that game that reminded you. It was very reminiscent of what you saw in the Portland game on Friday.
that's right.
Um, and despite Chetty having 20, if you did want to point to somebody or something on the box score that stands out as something that also could have been the difference tonight, it's
Mhm,
definitely Jeremy Sohan having 2 points. And I was in a group chat with some friends texting earlier, just talking about this, and I hadn't talked to them in a while, but they're all Spurs fans, and they were talking about Jeremy, and we kind of made I made the point. I was like, it's like either it feels like Jeremy's gonna he has a really good game, or it's like you have to remind yourself that he's out there.
mhm,
And unfortunately, this was one of those games, and that can be said for Keldon as well. Um, Now, with that being said, I still think overall, like the game against Minnesota was kind of like what Jeremy can do when he's not having a crazy game, like the in between, if you will. I will
mhm.
say that I've been seeing more of those, 13, 14 points, 5 assists, 6 rebounds, something like that.
I'll
Um,
take that.
right, exactly. But at the same time, uh, just the times where you have games like this, I guess
Mhm.
is the point I'm trying to make. And so you would like to see less of those where he just kind of almost completely disappears, it feels like. And like I said, same thing goes for Keldon.
I still think he's on an upward trajectory despite this game. I think he'll continue to improve. Again, second year. Malachi's not even playing. He's in his second year. Like, these things happen when you're this young. So,
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And that was kind of why I was trying to bring up the other
yeah, yeah,
games.
yeah.
Like we've seen like the in between. And
Mhm,
and and the bigger point that I forgot to leave out there is just straight up since he's been playing the four again,
mhm.
we've seen that happen. And the other thing is I think when you look at Sohan's offense, not to dive into this too much, like because it's not the prettiest, there's going to be nights where it just sometimes doesn't work at this point of his career.
Yeah, yeah. Agreed.
Yeah, and also this, I mean, it ties into Devin and Wemby were kind of the key facilitators tonight as well. And so, he wasn't just going to go out and force it, which I did like, even with the way that he started when it wasn't hitting, it
Mhm.
wasn't like he kept doing that for the rest of the game.
True.
But still, we'll get into the fourth quarter here, and there was some interior defense that I would have liked to see, a little bit more from him. Now, I will say that was kind of a tough situation for him to be in. Like I was noticing the run lanes. There was one time where we got jumbled on a fast break in the fourth quarter, and it was kind of because Sohan was just there because he wasn't really exactly sure where to go. Like where if Barlow was in, like
Mhm.
it would have been much more connected, and flowing. Um, but I'll dish it to you for fourth quarter notes here, Ethan.
Yeah, first note I have is Dom fouls out. And I was a little surprised, honestly, that Sandro didn't get any play. I thought maybe we try him at the five with Sohan next to him. Maybe that's a little bit better. I don't know. It was a lose-lose situation. Not much you could do. Keldon keeping us just slightly ahead. Chetty also a big reason we were slightly ahead and really in this game in the fourth quarter. I said, "How is that not a loose ball foul on Kuzma?" at the end of the game where he had his forearm in Wemby's throat, basically pushing him away from the rebound. Um, and then the last note, lost the game because of silly turnovers, miscues, lack of intensity, and the refs didn't help.
Yeah, when you say those first three things, Ethan, that's why at the end of the day, Gregory Wee commented this earlier, that I don't think the refs were the reason that the Spurs lost tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but with the way that they were playing, it definitely didn't help.
No.
If the execution was higher, we didn't have as many turnovers, we would have been able to pull this one out regardless of the foul calls on Barlow. Um, but unfortunately, we just weren't able to get the job done tonight, and
Mm.
that's just kind of a symptom of this team.
Yep.
It honestly, as we're continuing this, Ethan, I'm just like, this was just kind of a reminder night. You know what I
It
mean?
was.
Of what it's like having the youngest team in the league. And it really isn't that surprising when you consider we just won our first back-to-back, like I mentioned earlier. As much as I wanted a win streak tonight and this was a competitive game, like I said, it just kind of reminded us of some of the bottom lines with this team. But I'll read you what I had. So we were shot for shot with them for the first 2.5 minutes. Barlow fouled out. I wrote that screwed our interior defense and our lineup chemistry plus rotations. That's why I was mentioning the Sohan run lanes thing earlier. Um, Team defense is not as good tonight overall, but we still had a chance. I wrote that in the middle of the quarter. Um, I wrote down, thank gosh, Jordan Poole has random turnovers. And that's the other key with tonight. Like, they had more turnovers than us, like you mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
and we still found a way to lose. Like, that's another tough thing. There was a 9-0 run from the Wizards at the 3:33 mark. I'm not sure when that started, but there was a 9-0 run from the Wizards then. I ended up counting it. It built to a 16-4 run at the
Mm.
149 mark. I'm pretty sure this started around mid-quarter. So, I mean, there you go. You give up a 16-4 run in a close game in the middle of the fourth quarter. And then you have the KJ turnover, which was killer.
Mm.
Um, and it sucks because he didn't have a terrible game tonight. There were some good things that I saw from him, not even just scoring wise. It was semi-efficient scoring wise, and then he had like 5 rebounds and 5 assists too, with 3 steals. Like, he was doing a lot of other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like Sean said at the end of the game, man, like I honestly, I didn't. I watched the play, but it was like I looked up from my phone late taking notes, and then it was like I just kind of saw KJ on the ground and him just airmail Wemby. So maybe you can take me through that possession a little bit more. Sean just said like it was like he tried to one hand pass it.
Mm-hmm. Well, he drove into the lane. Props to the Wizards. They were able to get the hand on the ball without fouling. So, struggling to pick it back up, kind of dove a little bit halfway on the floor. And Wemby was at the 3-point line. So Keldon was trying to just throw it to him at the 3-point line. And Wemby thought he wanted him to cut. So Wemby cut at the same time that he threw a one-handed pass. And Wemby just couldn't recover. Shout out to Devin, though, because that was going to be an easy layup for Tyus Jones on the other end. But Devin sprinted back there and touched the ball, knowing it was going to be a backcourt violation. But at the very least, we didn't give up 2 easy points. We forced them to take a shot.
Yeah, we ended up losing that fourth quarter
Mm-hmm.
31-20. And that was the biggest quarter win in the
Mm-hmm.
game.
Yep, not an easy one to swallow, Jude, but not unexpected.
Yeah, as we've talked about this and we've gone through the game flow, Ethan, I think it's everything that happened tonight has become a little bit less surprising. We're in the
Yep.
moment because of the last 2 wins. You were kind of like your standard was raised. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? When you have a team like this, you're just gonna have some games like this.
Mm. And not without positives. Uh,
Right.
Don Barlow played very well despite 6 fouls. Blake Wesley continues to show us glimpses of why he was drafted in the first round. And Chetty Osman, of course, and Devin and Wemby, like as a pairing, like this was probably their best like 1-2 combo game
Hmm.
that we've seen. So
For sure. I'm just looking at the box score here again. Barlow had 5 assists in
Hmm.
14 minutes. May have not had any crazy rebounds, um, but he would have played more also if it wasn't for the foul trouble, and maybe would have been more aggressive on the boards if he didn't have 3 fouls
Mm,
pretty quickly in the game. But the 5 assists for me in 14 minutes is good to see, and that also ties in with when you talk about the way that we run our offense. That's also really good to see with this whole him and Zach conversation. It's not like if that does end up happening, that the playmaking that Zach brings is just going to completely fall off either. But I'm
sure.
not completely making a determination on that yet either. I'm just very, very glad that we have Don Barlow on this 2-way contract, Ethan, because with the Charles Bassey injury, and obviously Zach has had some injuries multiple times throughout this
Hmm.
season. Um, it's not only been huge for just like the development of the team moving forward, but it's just been huge to have somebody that we can put out there, in wake of these injuries that's actually competent. Because as much as I love my boy Mamu, um, there would just be some things that he would get taken advantage of, mainly defensively,
Mm.
um, that that I think Dom is able to bring.
Sean says something early in the game about if Don Barlow can improve as much as he improved from year one to year two, as to year two to year three, it's going to be really hard not to give him meaningful minutes next season.
Yeah, and a full contract this
Hmm.
summer.
Yeah, for sure.
It will be interesting to see. But more importantly, Ethan, before we end, as much as we talk about Barlow so much on the show because he's like my Drew Eubanks, actually big news, shout out to him. He was named to the G League Next Up game, which is the
Woo.
equivalent of the G League All-Star game. So shout out to Dom for that. That's another feather in his cap
Mm,
going into the All-Star break and potentially this offseason as well. Just
mm.
some good Spurs news though overall. I don't know when the other All Stars are going to get announced, but I feel like Wemby's going to make it. What do you think?
I don't know. It's a tough call because don't the coaches decide completely
Ooh,
the
that's
reserves?
interesting. Yeah, I wasn't sure. I was thinking that the fan voting would have like some sort of impact on that, but if it
Maybe I'm
doesn't,
wrong, but I don't think historically it hasn't. I don't know if they
okay,
changed that.
okay. For the bench, do they have impact on the starters?
That they've the fans, yes, they do have
Okay,
impact on the
okay.
stars and the media as well. But historically, I think it was
I think you're
the
right.
assistant coaches get to choose the reserves.
Yes, but is Adam Silver going to be like money, money, money?
He could. I mean, Zion made it as a reserve.
Well, the other thing is that like he's like leading the league in blocks, I think, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's
Far
crazy.
fetched, but it's
Yeah,
not guaranteed. It's not guaranteed.
I
Okay.
just I'd have to look at the list. I don't know who else is like. Is he in over Sabonis this year? I'm just like spit, like that's like a low name. You know what I mean? I haven't looked at who else is available, but
You know what I'm thinking about though? The more that I'm talking, Ethan, it really doesn't matter because Wemby's going to be in the
oh, for
skills
sure.
challenge.
And
That's
the
at
rookies, he's got to be in the World versus USA team.
Oh yeah, that too. Duh. I can't believe I wasn't thinking of that. Um, So yeah, because I was thinking, okay, we'll see, we'll have Don Barlow, and then we'll also have Wemby. But now that I think you're mentioning that, Jeremy might be on that Rising Stars team too.
He might.
So this might be the most Spurs filled All Star weekend that we've had in a while, Ethan. Since my boy Marco won the
Mm.
3-point contest back in the day.
Marco Bellinelli. Have we really not had anyone else since Marco?
We
Like
had
in like,
Dejounte, but he played. I don't know if we've
but
had
I'm
anybody
talking
in a
like three
contest.
3-point shootout, dunk contest, skills challenge. I
I
think.
don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it's just Marco,
Yeah.
2014.
Didn't Tony do the skills challenge
Yeah, that
once?
way back when.
Right.
Like I was
Okay.
like mid
Yeah.
2000s. Um, yeah,
Wemby's running away with the skills challenge. That's my prediction.
that's gonna be really fun to watch, dude.
Dom Barlow double double in the G
Mm.
League All Star game too. Mac
Well,
McClung, Amani Bates,
yeah,
Cam Whitmore. You don't know it's coming.
Doug McDermott 3-point shootout. Let's make it happen.
Actually, that no. Well, you know what they're doing this year.
Hmm.
If I maybe this is just like part of it,
The Steph
But
versus
but
UNESCO.
that's what I was gonna say. I thought that's like, isn't that the whole 3-point contest this year?
It better not be, or I'm gonna be pissed.
I think it is. I think it is.
That can't be true.
I
That's the
feel like I
whole
heard that.
contest?
I
Like,
think so.
put her in it. That'd be cool, but
But I
we
know.
need the other, like, 8 guys. Like, that's, like, half the fun.
What I saw was Steph Curry versus Sabrina Ionesco.
I think that
So
might just be, like, a plus. I don't know if that's taking over.
maybe they're just like, oh, look, we've got the best female and best male shooter in the contest, and there's also some other people. But
Are they gonna give her the woman's ball? They have to.
ooh, that's a good question. I
They
don't
have
know.
to.
Yeah, they
That'd
should.
be so cheap if they gave her the men's ball, they're
That
like,
would be
"Let's
wrong.
go." She'd be like, "Oh, come on, guys." That'd be horrible.
It also like it's just she plays with a different ball
Yeah,
all
it's just
year.
not
Like that.
fair.
Yeah. Like anyways, I guess if they did that, maybe they could do like I feel like if they put more people in it though, they would have to like make it even. I mean, they don't have to technically, but I feel like you know what I'm saying? I don't know,
Yeah,
man. I probably should just go look this up, but I'm pretty sure it's just a one-on-one, dude. Which is crazy.
that
And I
is
didn't really
crazy.
think of it like that because we've just, done it the other way for
I'm
so
I'm
long.
pretty sure it'll be separate, though.
I
I
hope
think they'll
so.
have the
You're
normal ones, too.
probably right. I don't know.
I can't
I've said
imagine
I'm
them
right.
taking
I've
that
said you're
away.
wrong. Who knows? That but as you're talking about it for sure, like that would be crazy if they completely changed the format.
Let's throw, Brittany Griner in the dunk contest.
She just got her jersey honored at Baylor, so there you go.
Did she? Good for her. Welcome home.
Alrighty, y'all. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Tell us in the comments if you know for sure what's happening at the All-Star game, and also give us your predictions for Don Barlow's stat line and Wemby's stat line, as well as potentially Jeremy's in the Rising Stars game. But more importantly, or not importantly, don't forget to hit like and subscribe below if you enjoyed the content. And if you want to stay updated with everything, follow us on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, at SSPN on YT, at Jude McLaren, and at Ethan_Quintero. And final thing, if you want to support SSPN, be sure to go to SSPN.myspreadshop or .spreadshop. It doesn't matter. The link is in the YouTube bio, or you can hit the QR code right here as well to get you some merch. And if you go on there and you go to all products and you're like, this isn't that much, just go to the men's section, the accessories section,
Or
and
women's.
or women's too. Yeah, you can click on both of those, and then
Like, filter down. And
you can find there will be a lot more items when you go click on those. I've tried to fix it, but it just it doesn't work with me. But the good news is you can still find all of the stuff. Ethan and I ordered some gear today, so you'll be seeing us wearing that soon. And we hope you guys do the same. We appreciate y'all, though. Of course, you do not have to. Just a way to support the show. We appreciate y'all. We'll catch y'all on the next one. Go Spurs, go.